Welcome to Headline Hub Updates. Subscribe and press the bell icon for more updates. The news broke, sending shockwaves through living rooms and government offices alike. It was like a thunderclap across a continent already on edge, reverberating through the hearts of millions. Frantic reports from the Polish-Belarusian border quickly gave way to shocking images, as the world tried to make sense of the chaos unfolding in real time. There it was, a Russian Orlan 30 drone, armed and erratic, crossing into Polish airspace under the cover of darkness. It targeted a Polish supply convoy bound for Ukraine, unleashing a catastrophic explosion. Twisted metal, black smoke, and chaos erupting in an instant. The devastation was immediate and total. This was no border mishap, no accidental incursion. The intent was unmistakable. It was a direct attack on NATO soil, a brazen move that shattered the fragile sense of security in Eastern Europe. The red line had been crossed, a threshold that many had feared but hoped would never come. The world held its breath, leaders scrambling to respond as citizens watched in disbelief. Was this a tragic mistake, a miscalculation, or the start of something far worse? An escalation that could engulf the continent? Polish first responders rushed in, braving the wreckage and flames to save lives, their courage on full display. The casualty reports were grim. Soldiers and civilians among the dead, families shattered in an instant, the cost of conflict laid bare. Moscow's message was clear. NATO's support for Ukraine would not go unpunished. The Kremlin's words echoed with menace. Poland invoked Article 4, demanding emergency consultations with its allies, seeking unity and a path forward in the face of aggression. But it was Article 5, the collective defense clause, that now loomed over Europe, its promise of mutual defense suddenly more than just words on paper. The world watched, waiting for NATO's next move, as uncertainty and fear gripped the globe. The drone strike shattered any illusion of a contained conflict, exposing the fragility of peace in the region. It brought the world's most powerful military alliance to the brink of direct confrontation with nuclear-armed Russia, a scenario once thought unthinkable. The Rubicon had been crossed, and there would be no turning back. The question was no longer if NATO would respond, but how, and how far the response would go. The stakes had never been higher, with the fate of Europe and perhaps the world hanging in the balance. Europe was on the edge of a new era, its future uncertain, its people united in anxiety and resolve. The next evening, President Emmanuel Macron addressed the nation from the Élysée Palace, his voice echoing through the grand halls with a gravity that had not been heard in decades. The French people watched, sensing the weight of history in the air as their president prepared to speak not just to them, but to the world. He condemned the attack on Poland as a barbaric act, a violation of international law and human decency, and insisted that such aggression could not go unanswered. Macron's words were clear. This was a moment that demanded unity, resolve, and a collective response from all of Europe. France, he declared, was placing itself on a war footing, ready to defend its allies and its own sovereignty. The government convened an emergency session, the mood tense but determined. The Rapid Reaction Corps was mobilized with unprecedented speed. Tens of thousands of troops began preparations for immediate deployment to NATO's eastern flank, reinforcing the alliance's front lines. Reservists across the country were put on notice, receiving urgent mobilization orders. Men and women from all walks of life answered the call, reporting to recruitment offices and military bases. France was readying for the worst, determined to do everything possible to prevent it. Military planners worked through the night, inspecting equipment and updating contingency plans. Macron invoked the indomitable spirit of the French resistance, urging citizens to stand together in defense of liberty and democracy, just as their forebears had done in darker times. Defense production ramped up across the nation, with factories working overtime to supply the armed forces. Cyber defense teams reinforced digital borders, while French air and naval assets were swiftly deployed to the Baltic and Black Seas, signaling France's commitment to collective security. Macron clarified that this was not a declaration of war, but a declaration of readiness, a message of deterrence and solidarity with France's allies. The message to Moscow was unmistakable. An attack on our allies is an attack on us. France would not stand by in the face of aggression. Macron called for national unity, resilience, and sacrifice, reminding the nation that their strength lay in their shared values and collective will. He asked the French people to stand as a bulwark against tyranny, to support one another, and to show the world the true meaning of solidarity. As La Marseillaise played across the nation, the reality set in. Peace in Europe was hanging by a thread, and the choices made in the coming days would shape the continent's future. France now stood at the forefront of its own defense, its soldiers on alert, its people united. The eyes of the world were watching, waiting to see what would come next. The time for talk was over. The midnight hour had struck, and with it, a new era of resolve began. The time for action had arrived. France was ready to defend its values, its allies, and its future, no matter the cost. La Nation en Arms, the nation in arms, became reality as France mobilized. Hospitals activated emergency protocols, postponing surgeries and stockpiling supplies. Medical reservists prepared for deployment. Defense manufacturers accelerated production. Civilian factories retooled for military needs. Tech firms reinforced cybersecurity, anticipating Russian attacks. Even agriculture prepared for crisis, ensuring food security. Public service announcements instructed citizens on emergency readiness and disinformation. Schools taught civil defense and first aid. A national volunteer portal saw hundreds of thousands sign up. Every citizen had a role. The threat of war was no longer abstract. It was a daily reality. France's resolve in 2025 is rooted in its history: Verdun, the Somme, the trauma of occupation. The lesson appeasement invites disaster. After World War II, France became a NATO pillar, vowing never to stand alone again. De Gaulle's insistence on strategic autonomy shaped France's defense doctrine. The fall of the Berlin Wall brought hope, but old mistrust with Russia lingered. The drone strike over Poland proved history's ghosts were not banished. France's leadership now draws on this legacy, united but vigilant. The past had returned, demanding action. The crisis of 2025 was decades in the making, its roots stretching deep into the tangled history of post-Cold War Europe. What seemed sudden to many was, in reality, the culmination of years of mounting tension and unresolved grievances. NATO's steady eastward expansion fueled growing Russian resentment, as Moscow viewed each new member as a direct encroachment on its traditional sphere of influence. Protests and warnings from Russia were often dismissed in Western capitals. Putin's narrative of Western betrayal only hardened over time, especially after the NATO intervention in Kosovo and the US-led invasion of Iraq, which he saw as blatant disregard for international norms. The 2008 war in Georgia and the 2014 annexation of Crimea signaled Russia's willingness to use force to defend its interests, sending shockwaves through the international community. The West's muted and often divided responses only emboldened Moscow, reinforcing the belief that the consequences would be limited. The full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022 shattered any remaining trust between Russia and the West, plunging the region into chaos and displacing millions. For NATO, the conflict became existential, a test of unity and resolve. For Russia, it was framed as a desperate fight against what it saw as relentless Western encroachment. The war quickly escalated into a brutal proxy conflict, with each side pouring in weapons, intelligence, and support, raising the stakes with every passing month. The incident of the drone over Poland was not an isolated event, but the inevitable result of years of mistrust, confrontation, and failed diplomacy. The road to this moment was long, and paved with broken promises, missed opportunities, and a trust that once shattered proved nearly impossible to rebuild. The Ukraine war redefined modern conflict: hybrid, digital, relentless. Drones became ubiquitous, from cheap quadcopters to advanced military models. The battlefield was transparent, surprise was rare. Success depended on real-time data and rapid strikes. Alongside the fighting, a fierce information war raged. Disinformation, propaganda, and cyber attacks blurred the lines between peace and war. The drone strike in Poland was both a physical and psychological escalation. France's mobilization was a response to this new hybrid threat. Defense now meant resilience in both digital and physical domains. Within hours, NATO's North Atlantic Council convened in Brussels. The attack was a direct challenge to the alliance's credibility. Operation Eastern Century was launched, the largest NATO mobilization in history. The US deployed airborne troops, fighter jets surged to the Baltics. The UK, Germany, and France reinforced the eastern flank with tanks, jets, and artillery. Smaller nations contributed missile defenses, infantry, and naval assets. The operation was a logistical feat, moving vast resources eastward. France's role was central, reinforcing Romania and patrolling the Black Sea. Every nation's contribution signaled unity. The message, any further aggression would meet overwhelming force. NATO stood as one, ready for whatever came next. On paper, NATO dwarfs Russia in spending, technology, and manpower. But Russia's military is battle-hardened, its war economy in overdrive. Tactical nuclear weapons and rapid decision-making give Moscow dangerous leverage. NATO's multinational strength is also a challenge. Coordination is complex, unity fragile. Russia exploits divisions with disinformation and energy politics. Years of low defense spending left some NATO members unprepared for high-intensity war. Russia's alliances with Iran, North Korea, and China help sustain its war effort. The strategic balance is precarious. NATO's power is overwhelming, but Russia's resilience and nuclear arsenal make it a formidable foe. The outcome of direct conflict is far from certain. France's mobilization and NATO's response are acts of deterrence, meant to prevent war, not start it. But every move risks miscalculation. The world is closer to great power war than in decades. The specter of nuclear escalation looms. Russia's doctrine allows first use if threatened. Even a conventional war would devastate Europe, displacing millions and collapsing economies. The human and economic costs would be staggering. France and NATO prepare reluctantly, hoping to force a return to diplomacy. The message, further aggression, will be met with overwhelming force. To preserve peace, Europe must now prepare for war. The continent's future depends on a perilous balance, deterrence without escalation. The world watches, hoping the brink is not crossed.